Hello, Dietitian Bosses. This is Sarah, the Director of Operations here at Dietitian Boss, and I am so excited to have with me one of our clients in our executive program, Lindsay. Hey, Lindsay, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm excited to chat today.
Yeah, excited to jump into some questions. And before we do, if y'all want to look her up on Instagram, you can find her at Female Athlete Nutrition, and be sure to check her out. So yeah, as we get started here, I would love to know, and I'm sure the listeners would love to know, how did you first find out about the program, and what made you decide to give it a try?
Right. I'm not 100% positive, but having a virtual practice myself, I've always been virtual. I rely on social media heavily
Yeah.
for my marketing and my sales. And so somewhere along the lines, I heard of Libby. And
Yeah.
I think I also maybe probably was following other dietitians that
Mm.
had successful practices, online practices, and
Right.
saw kind of figured out that, oh, they're working with their dietitian bosses, they're working with
Mhm.
Libby. And so ultimately that's how I knew of her. Now
Yeah.
I've been in business now for, actually, is this my third year? It's my third year, although it feels,
Congrats.
thank you, yeah, my first year didn't really feel like
Mm.
it though, or at least those
Yep.
first months I kind of like just
Right.
that didn't really
Yeah.
count.
Not really official.
Yeah. But officially, I was unemployed, moved to a new
Mm.
city, decided I wanted to start my own thing in
Yeah.
November of 2018. So that's exactly
Wow.
3 years ago. And in my first 2 years, I
Mhm.
had three different business coaches and three very
Okay.
different experiences as
Mhm.
well. And so by the
Yeah.
time that I did come to Libby and Dietitian Bosses, I had already had a lot of business coaching, was already finding a lot of success, but I felt like
Mm.
I hadn't had somebody who was a specialist in dietetics and nutrition.
Right.
And so
Mhm.
as I'm following other people on social media and I'm like, okay, I know
Yeah.
they're dietitian bosses, they're dietitian bosses, they're dietitian bosses.
Right.
Like, is there something I'm missing here? Because I'm
Yeah.
not a dietitian boss.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's really what led me to her, was like, I did feel, and we can get into this more, but I felt like, is there something that other dietitian bosses are doing that I'm
Mhm.
not? Because
Right.
my direction with business coaching hadn't been with a nutrition
Got
business.
it.
If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
So maybe they couldn't relate maybe quite as much since they were in a little bit different area. And it's interesting that you said, being online, you just learned of Dietitian Boss somewhere, or learned of Libby. And that's the great thing about having a strong online presence is, you can be in contact in different places, and you start to learn and become aware. And then it's like, oh, wow, maybe I ought to check this out. So that's really great. Well, then, so I'm curious, what was it that made you decide to do the Dietitian Boss program? I mean, was it just the difference in nutrition, and you felt like you could, or what was it that really made you say yes?
Yeah. So it's funny because I remember back to like my first consultation call with Libby, and I called her. I
Uh-huh.
booked that call not really knowing what I wanted. I wasn't
Oh, okay.
necessarily, yeah. She kept asking
Uh,
me like, "Why are you here?" I'm like, "I don't really know,"
oh,
because
wow. Okay.
I had a successful business going,
Mhm.
but there were a few concerns that I had. One of them being legal
Mm,
concerns of my business,
right.
of being a
Yeah.
dietitian. And I had consulted with, other lawyers, but
Mhm.
I didn't feel settled that I was
Yeah.
doing things the right way. Because
Right.
what I do, Sarah, I help female athletes overcome disordered eating and perform at their
Mhm.
highest level.
Mhm.
So disordered eating,
Yeah.
there's some medical cases,
Definitely. Yeah.
and the advice I had previously received
Mm,
um, was to set up my practice so that I was not doing MNT in order to just kind of
right.
avoid that
Mhm.
hassle. And so that's
Yeah.
what I was operating under for 2 years. But
Oh, wow.
it was fine and everything.
Mhm.
But I can't even begin to tell you, Sarah, how many sleepless nights I
Mm,
had worrying about, am I doing things right legally?
Yeah.
And for my clients, am I really doing things best practices?
Right.
And because
Right.
I had business coaches who had helped my business become successful as far as branding, authority, coaching, sales,
Yeah.
marketing, having this amazing program, having transformative results, I still I didn't feel settled. I didn't have peace of mind that I was doing things per like dietitian standards. And so,
Right.
you know, and it's funny too, because, you know, you and Libby will always say like, consult with a lawyer because you're not the lawyers either,
Right.
but being a part of this community, one, you do have a consultant that I did,
Yep.
you know, through your program,
Yep.
was able
We
to
do.
consult with.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Right.
through learning how the other dietitian bosses are doing things, um, you know, I got that clarity that I needed from the legal perspective, redid a few
Yeah.
contracts, had that consultant appointment,
Right.
and I did get so much peace of mind
Mm,
joining this program of like, okay, I am doing things right,
yeah.
my state and every state guideline and things like that. And so I definitely want to stress to your listeners, because I'm sure people want to, you know, or people who are interested in joining Dietitian Boss might be like, but what am I going to get out of it? And there's a lot of things
Right.
that you can get out of it. There's so many
Yeah.
things you can get, but I actually really want to stress the importance of like that peace of mind, because,
Yeah.
you know, my stress levels, my anxiety levels,
Mhm.
saying how much time did I waste just worrying,
Right.
that I now
Right.
feel so much more confident in.
Yeah. And that's great to know that it gave you peace of mind. You know, one thing we do is we do try to bring in different experts and consultants so that they can support you all with different aspects of the business, because there's a lot. I mean, when you're running a business, there are so many different things to think about, and to try to do it on your own, or you know, figure it out. And like you said, all the worrying and the time spent. So it's good to hear that it really gave you that peace of mind. So then, what would you say, did at some point you really establish a goal or what you wanted to achieve with the program? Because you said on that call with Libby, you were not really sure, you know, when she was asking you what you wanted. So how did you, at that point, like, do you remember thinking like, oh, I want to accomplish XYZ? Or was it more just joining the community and figuring it out what you wanted?
Yeah, there were a few other things that I was interested in,
Mhm.
and I did need that game plan. You know, I didn't come in hot saying like I want to do XYZ, but
Yeah.
the things I was interested in is that my program for those 2 years, my services, did rely heavily on one-on-one sessions with my
Mm,
clients.
yeah.
And I had hired team members to help me with
Mhm.
that. So all of that was
Yeah.
going good. But I was looking into my future. You know, I was
Mhm.
looking at my
Yeah.
1 year and my 5 year plan. And I
Yeah.
personally knew that I had lots of big changes coming up.
Mhm. Right.
Um, one of them being pregnancy,
Yeah.
starting a family.
Yeah.
And another one is that my husband is active duty military. And
Mhm.
so we will be moving, and our move
Oh,
next
wow.
year. Yeah, our move next year is a really, really big move, an international move.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it's one of those things where I knew kind of like how I'm operating right now, it's
Mm,
successful, but it's going to have to
right.
change.
Yeah.
And again, through like just following other dietitian bosses online and stuff, I knew that you guys had a way to run some more like streamlined group
Mm,
programs, do some
mhm.
online courses.
Right.
And those were things that I thought I wanted to move into. I didn't
Mhm.
want to throw away my successful program that involved the one-on-one
Right.
consults, but I
Yeah.
wanted to see how can I add and grow into that so that the
Mhm.
business can continue to move forward
Yeah.
while not necessarily taking more of my time for one-on-one stuff,
Right.
because that's going to be hard, not only when I'm building a family, but also when I'm in a time zone that's, 15 hours different.
Exactly.
Actually,
Yeah. That's a lot to deal with.
it is. So I think that that would be this, the other thing. I didn't come into
Mhm.
the program knowing I want to achieve X, Y, and Z, but it was
Right.
like, I'm going to need to shift. And
Yeah.
again, my past business coaches, like we found success one way, but I
Mhm.
knew that there were other dietitians finding success in other ways. And so,
Yeah.
um, Yeah. And those are the things that, we have worked on is like
Right. Yes.
a course. So something
We have,
more passive. That's
right.
the thing that we've worked on. And then the other thing is that as I was able to start like a group option and continue to build out my team so that it's not
Yeah,
taking over my time. So the business is growing while
exactly.
I'm not spending more
Right.
time.
Not all on you. So you just brought up team, and I would love to know, what have you had any big ahas or learning experiences as you've been building that team and bringing those people on?
Oh yeah.
I was thinking you could pick maybe one, a biggest one or two. I know it can be quite the journey to hire and train, and I think we learn a lot in the process.
Scary.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
scary. You go into business as an entrepreneur and this is your baby and you
Right.
build it and you grow it, you take ownership of it, you're so proud of it. And so to invite somebody
Yeah.
else into that
It's a big deal.
and then to hand it over to them,
Yeah.
it's scary, it's difficult. And I have this post-it. I know your listeners won't be able to see it, but I have a post-it note that's been
Yes.
sitting here for the entire year that says leader, trusting, fearless.
Mm,
And these are
yeah.
kind of my themes for the past year.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not just a dietitian,
Right.
and I'm not just a coach to my clients. I have to be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be trusting and I
Yeah.
have to be fearless.
Yeah.
That if I'm not trusting in my employees,
Right.
this isn't going to work, but I also have to lead them,
Yes.
and so it's a shift. There's so many things that I've learned, but I think
Mhm.
one of the biggest things that I've shifted as I'm building my team is that in how I used to coach my clients, like
Mhm.
my clients are my team now.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need to coach them and
Right.
lead them.
Mhm.
And so that's been a big learning curve. I think to know it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I have my clients, but like my actual main client is my team. If I support
Right.
my team can support my clients.
Exactly. Yeah. So do you have then a tip you could share with anybody listening that's maybe in the same position where they've started out, it was just them, they're growing, they need to hire somebody, and maybe they're scared to do that, to take that step and kind of let go? Do you have a tip or anything maybe that helped you that you could pass along to them?
Well, I do want to say that it's worth it. And I
Yeah.
think with all business, you have to be thinking not about what do you need right now. It's what do I need 6 months from now? What do I need a year
Yeah.
from now? And I already mentioned pregnancy, but I actually hired my first dietitian to work under me before I knew I was pregnant, just because I knew
Wow. That was smart.
someday I'm going to
Yes.
want to, right?
Right.
And I'm so glad I started that process because 9 months
Yes.
goes by really quick. So
It does.
yes, it went by way too fast. So I'm really glad I started that process before, to know
Yeah.
that however you're operating now, even if nothing's wrong,
Right.
is this what you want to keep up for 10 years?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point.
And
Yeah.
so I had to be honest with myself, as happy as I am right now, as
Yeah.
successful as this is, like 10 years from now, do I want to be doing the exact same thing?
Exactly.
No. So what
Yeah.
is the next step? The next step is hiring. Even though it was scary, even though I maybe
Yeah.
wasn't quite ready for it, start the process, because boom, 1 year later, I need it.
Yeah.
I'm
Like you said,
relying on my team.
yeah. And that time goes fast. And I think sometimes there's the misconception that if I hire somebody now, it's going to cost me more money and it's not going to, I'm going to be losing money. But in fact, it's going to, in the long run, it's going to make you money and free up time. Because like you said, 10 years, do you want to still be doing this the same 10 years down the road? Do you want it all on you? Most of us are going to say no. Like, we don't want to be still doing that. And so planning ahead and doing that before you're ready. And I know, that's one thing I support a lot of you all with hiring and trying to find those right team members. And then once you find them, like you just talked about, they're very valuable. And by training them, they're going to be helping you with your clients. And so it's worth investing that time and making sure they feel valued and appreciated, and that they want to stay around long term to support you and what you're ultimately building.
Yeah. And from that financial perspective, Sarah, yeah, because I was scared of that too. I remember
Yeah.
if we can talk money for a moment.
Yeah, definitely.
I was just at the point where I was consistently hitting 10K a month, which
Okay.
was a goal for a
Yeah.
while. And so I finally am like consistently hitting 10K a month. And I think that's when I started thinking about hiring. And it was like, really? Like I finally reached my financial goal. Am I really
Right.
going to just
Now I want to give some money away. Yeah.
give it away? Well, in hiring somebody, within the first 6 months of hiring someone, I was consistently hitting 15K a month.
Yeah.
And now almost a year later, I'm in the 15 to 20K a month range.
Yeah.
And so it's scary,
Right.
but it's that's the only way, because then when you free up
Yeah.
your time, you can do other things. Like I
Yeah.
launched a podcast in the last year that
Yeah.
brings me clients. So
Right.
I'm not always on one-on-one calls with clients because I have somebody, an employee,
Exactly.
do other things and continue to grow. So
Yeah.
it, from that financial perspective, it's like, again, at that 10K
Right.
mark, really, I just got
Yeah.
here. I'm really
Yeah.
doing this. But
And
you
now
have,
I'm gonna,
yeah, you have
like
to
you
think
said,
in advance.
yeah, looking ahead. And the other great thing too about when you hire is, sometimes when we're doing it by ourselves, we a lot of times are doing things we don't like, we don't love, they kind of drain us. And it's like, now you have somebody to delegate to, you have somebody to help you. It's just not all your responsibility anymore. And so sometimes just knowing you're not doing it alone can be great. So how many people do you have on your team right now? Do you just have the one employee right now, or do you have other team members?
So I have 2 dietitians,
Mhm.
and then I have a social media manager,
Okay.
and I have another virtual assistant. Her role is rather small, but hugely helpful.
Yeah.
I have a funny story about her too. And then I have somebody who edits my podcast. So another
Yeah.
virtual assistant. So,
Yeah.
kind of 5,
Yeah.
although they have varying,
Right.
every role is different on how much
Mhm.
weight that pulls for the
Exactly. Yeah.
company.
Yeah. So is the funny story something you wanted to share?
Yeah. It's a former client.
Oh, wow.
She's a student. I
Mhm.
work with a lot of younger, my population is more high school, college age. So she's a college student. She's a client, and she enrolled in my program and was just
Yeah.
saw so much success.
Mhm.
Also absolutely loved our mission. And like,
Yeah.
although she no longer needed us from
Mm.
that standpoint of the dietetic, like she was
Right.
no, it's like she didn't want to leave us.
Oh, wow.
And it's funny because it was right.
Yeah.
She herself is like a huge podcast listener, and she loved my
Mm.
podcast. And
Yeah.
I was actually looking for somebody to kind of help me manage the podcast and answer emails.
Yeah.
And that's my funny story is I
That's
think as
awesome.
building a team is like,
Mhm.
yeah, put out applications and stuff, but also like, because I think it's so important for people to be invested in your mission.
Yes. It's
And
supporting what you do. Yeah. It's important.
and like for that role, it was like, this is somebody whose heart is in this and she's fully invested.
Yeah.
And like, I never even put out a job posting or application.
That's awesome. Yeah.
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 So
You never know. You never know where you can find someone. Well, you've kind of shared with some of your goals and how they've changed, and you're pregnant and starting a family. You've got this big move. What would you say is your goal right now, knowing things are going to be changing quite a bit? What has that kind of looked like lately?
So I think I have been pushing so hard for the last 6 months on my goals in order to set me up for
Yeah.
having a baby who at the time of this recording is due
Yeah.
soon, within the next his due date's 3 weeks from now, but I feel like it's
Yeah.
tomorrow. So
Right.
so with that being said, like if you're going to ask me my current goal is to have a baby and,
Yes.
and to see all of the work from the past 6 months. What I've been trying to do is to get my team prepared so that I can take time off. This will be the first time. This will be the first time I am taking time off.
Yeah. How much time are you taking?
I have a solid 6 weeks planned with the like return coming back. Is for, the team is prepared to be flexible with that because in many senses, it's kind of like, well, this is also what building the team is for, so that I'm
Right.
not the one doing everything. So in some weird ways, I'm kind of like, once I take that time off, like, does it mean I just go back to picking everything up, or is this
Right.
a new way that we operate?
Yeah. May look different. Yeah.
It might look different.
Yeah.
And so we're all kind of on that same page, as far as my team goes, as far as,
Yeah.
hey, like, what is everybody's lane of
Right.
roles and responsibility?
Mhm.
Because there was a point in time where it was the Lindsay show and Lindsay doing everything. Lindsay
Right.
has spent 6 months delegating, getting everybody prepared, and this is their job and
Yeah.
role, so that I can step away.
It's
And
amazing. Yeah. Have
yeah,
that
and so
foundation to be able to do that.
mhm,
Yeah.
exactly. And so, yeah, so have a solid 6 weeks with that return to work being rather flexible, because we're going to
Mhm.
see where we're at,
Yeah.
and what are the essential duties that only
Right.
Lindsay can do.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Because yeah, you may change by then. You may be like, oh, I'm willing to do these 3 things, but these other things I don't want to do anymore. Or, one of your team members can do it. And that's what's great about, um, you know, having that freedom, being able to make those choices.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, that's really kind of covers, I guess, what's next. Is there if anybody's listening to this and they're thinking like, "Oh, I want to start a family. Here she's moving, got these big things, and you've been able to create the success. Like, what would be a tip you could leave our listeners with if they are just really trying to figure out what to do to get to that next level?"
yeah, I think I did kind of mention it already, of like thinking, you know, thinking 6 months or a year ahead.
Yeah.
And really envisioning that we all have our goals for right now. We all get caught up in our day-to-day work. But doing some, yeah, planning, even
Yeah.
within your programming, you guys do quarterly.
We've added that in. Yeah, we do the quarterly planning. Yeah, to try to help work towards those goals and then keep you all focused on your goals, so that you're not getting too caught up in the day to day, but yet looking ahead at, yeah, what's that big
Yeah.
thing we want to accomplish?
Yeah. And that was something I had been doing previously as well, of kind of like every quarter, just about every 3 to 4 months, kind of
Yeah.
reevaluating where am I at. And I think that as a tip is, when you do that, you not only do you want to set goals for the next 3 months, but you do want to envision, where do I want to be a year from now? Where do I want to be 5 years from now?
Yeah.
And it's going to be scary to take action now on a goal that you want 5 years from now.
Yeah.
But that would be my tip is
Yeah.
do that.
That's great. Yeah.
Start taking action now on whatever your goal is. Probably maybe not 5 years, but definitely the 1 and 3 year,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
I think that's a tip that I have, because yeah, it's really funny. I'm having this memory right now, Sarah, of talking to one of my best friends. It would have been about a year and a half ago now.
Mm.
And so it had, the business was being successful for a
Yeah.
full year or so at
Mhm.
that point.
Right.
And I was chatting with her, and she said something to me of like, so are you gonna like hire? And I was like, no, I love coaching my clients.
We're gonna do that.
Yeah, I was like, I just love coaching my clients so much. And she called me out on it. She was like,
Oh
no.
wow.
She goes, you're a boss. You're gonna have like 20 people working under you. and,
Oh,
and it's
a little
funny.
foreshadowing there. She
Yeah, a
knew.
little foreshadowing, because I was so content at that
Right.
time.
Yeah.
But it's not about what you're happy with right now. It's what are you going to be happy with a year from now or
Yeah.
2 years from now? And it's so true, because if I stayed there, yes, things were good, but
Right.
I probably would have been stuck at that
Yeah.
10K a
Yeah.
month mark. I would have been
Right.
stuck there. And I wouldn't have the flexibility to take 6 months, or 6 months, I wish. 6 weeks.
Maybe that's next 6 months.
Maybe not. Yeah, it might be. I wouldn't be able to take 6 weeks of
Right.
leave if I had nobody working under me. I wouldn't be able to keep the podcast rolling even while I'm on maternity leave. And these are
Exactly.
things I can do now. So I've created so much freedom.
Yeah.
So I think that my one tip is to really not just think about your 3 month goal. That's important, and not just
Mhm.
think about right now, but really think about that future.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love you giving that example of that conversation with your friend. I think it can be easy to kind of stay in our comfort zone. We get to where things are comfortable and it's like secure, and it can be scary to think about growing. But when you have people supporting you that can help push you and encourage you, it can help to make that a little easier, not quite as scary. So thanks for sharing that example. It's been really great hearing your story, and I'm sure the listeners will find it very helpful. Is there any last thing you want to leave them with before we wrap up? So you summed it up pretty well with the story with your friend. I loved that. So if you had any last advice for anybody out there trying to figure it out.
Give me a minute. I want to think of something.
Okay.
You can edit this pause out.
I would say we'll edit this pause out.
Yeah, I think the final thing that I want to leave with is, I came into this podcast kind of wanting to share two messages. One, which was the power of having peace of mind.
Yeah.
So being in this community of Dietitian Boss, really just feeling, I think, supported and on the right track. And that's something, we might as business owners have these like financial goals and stuff, but that's something like you can't put a price tag on that. And I think that's huge. And then the other thing I want to share is the more tangible side of things, of how when you are thinking 1 year in advance or 5 years in advance, how many doors can open with opportunities. There's so many different ways to do business. So I'm so grateful to have joined Dietitian Boss, because where I was operating in just one way, though it was successful, you guys have shown me a couple other ways, and I'm well on that path. And now I do have kind of multiple streams of income, so I don't feel so dependent on this is my only source.
Yeah, on one.
And that freak out every month of like, I don't have enough clients, or, whatever.
Right.
There's more stability. So I have more, faith that this business is not going away anytime soon.
Yeah.
And so I guess my final piece of advice or my final tip or statement here is just to say that I've really appreciated being a part of the Dietitian Boss community, and it's given me quite a bit.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, and congrats on being due in 3 weeks. I'm glad at least you're able to do this podcast, and then hopefully you can wrap things up the next week or two and have an amazing 6 weeks off. So thanks so much, Lindsay. It's been great talking with you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sarah.